Sorry for boring you. You've just seen me and I come back again. And I was telling Varda if he could, replace me instead. Or we can do add-on from there or anybody else. But listen, guys, it's a pleasure coming here. The subject that I'm going to talk about is very near to my heart. Something different that I have never spoken about. Mostly my friends and colleagues have seen me speak a lot about technology and HR transformation. But over the years that I've been doing this, I realized that just getting a tech or a platform is just not enough, right? And trust me when I say this, that I've gone through a lot of points of failures. There are a lot of failures that I've had along the way where what I thought will emerge did not emerge. So what really went wrong? Okay, so this session is mostly about that because I'm sure a lot of you all are in the journey of bringing in new age tech and new age AI and this and that and agents getting deployed left, right, and center. But maybe if I could share a few examples of where I failed, it could possibly help. Over the years, I've started believing that technology does not transform organizations. All right, it's always people. It is always and always people. There's this, maybe you all have also done something similar. I got a platform in a while back. And if you all heard me about talking about this use case of throwing up analytics on performance, right? Which is to say that my daily run rate, etc., which I just spoke about, right? Now, there is a platform where we said that performance ratings are going to generate to the performance management system. But the only reason why an employee is brought into that platform is what? Is to fill in their KPI sheets or goal sheets, is to actually give a response around the KPI saying that whether I achieved or not. And then is for the manager to give a feedback. You know what I'm talking about, right? If you actually go and we spoke a lot about listening, right? If you actually go and talk to your employees, one of the most hated platforms or tools that most organizations have that employees would tell you is the performance management system. We all hate it. I as an employee hate it. Because I look at it as something like a monitoring, surveillance, as Varda was saying, so all of that. And there is no real value add for me. Let's go deeper. Manager conversations, they happen. And the HR person says, record this in the tool. Why? Because HR wants to know whether this happened and what was said. But the fact is that if you actually read some of those, so let's say if I have a team of 10, at least 7 to 8 would be same language and same sentences and everything is the same. Why? Because either I copied, pasted, changed some. And now comes the world of AI, where you can just ask, hey, what feedback should I give? Now we've started copying and pasting that. All of this is good for me as a manager, you as a CHRO or a head of HR, but is this good for an employee? And that's where I'm saying that these systems fail. Because we did not design these systems around the employees, we designed this around our needs. And that's exactly the reason why 70% of the HR transformation journeys actually fail. And this is not my statistics, okay? It is from McKinsey and the others. People have invested millions and millions of dollars only to realize that it's given them nothing. It's only giving them more grief. The other system I love talking about is the whole LXP, LMS kind of a thing, where I am assigned a program which I do not know why. Has anybody been assigned these kind of programs which you don't know why? Huh? Yeah, but see, the hands don't go up. Fear. As Ashwini was saying in the morning, fear. Fear of acknowledgement, fear of data. But that's the reality. One of the best LMSs in the world, which all of us use absolutely free of cost, which is that? Absolutely. Why do we love YouTube? Think of Instagram. Why do we love Instagram? Instagram Reels. I watch my news on X and the others. Why? Because I love those platforms. Why is our LMS not like that? Because it was again not designed around an employee. Right? And that's where 70% of the HR transformation journeys fail. 57% of office workers are stressed by the sheer number of digital solutions that we are throwing on them. And the latest one is Copilot, I hear. Right? And then people are, Hari, tum Copilot. What do I do with Copilot? I don't know. right? I mean, if it's just about prompting and all of that, I mean, okay, then teach me a little bit. So I'm just fatigued with too many. So I'm talking like an employee to you all, so that you kind of, that's why I keep referring to I. I am not, as an employee I am, okay? So 57% of the employees are stressed because you've given them just too much to eat. 62% feel overwhelmed by the need to constantly learn new technologies, Copilot being a classic example. 3x gap in perception, where employees are 3x more likely to expect AI job displacement than leaders realize. This is a reality. And I keep talking about this whole AI business, that listen, this AI world is disruptive. Does it mean it's going to replace humans? No. I mean, quantum computer aside, but no. But it is definitely replacing tasks. So if I, as an employee, am made of 10 tasks, 7 of them are replaced by AI, so I'm only left with 3. And if those 3 don't have enough value, will you as an organization want to keep me? That's my worry. Right? So what are we doing about that? 20%, only this many IT leaders prioritize digital employee experience strategically. Most of the digital employee experience definition is, I've got tools. I've got this new tool. That's not digital employee experience. Sorry. You are basically creating a lot of fatigue in the organization. So why human-centric transformation matters? It's a behavioral change. I keep saying that technology is a behavioral change. Technology changes behavior. The classic example of all of this is Grammarly. Do you all remember Grammarly? Now we don't talk about it much, but there was a time when we were dependent on Grammarly to have auto corrections and all of that. It changed our behavior. It literally changed our behavior. AI is changing our behavior. But when you think of digital transformation, stop thinking things like adoption. Haven't we heard this metric? Hey, what's the adoption on the platform? Have you heard of this? It's a wrong metric. Just because you got a single user who came and did a sign-on is not equal to him or her adopting that technology. The real adoption is in utility. When people see value and they revisit that particular platform, how many times will people go to performance management tool or platform that you have in the organizations through the year? Only when you have review cycles. Why? There's no utility. When do I go to an LMS? Only when you send me a mandatory course. No utility. And that's where I'm wanting us to think, that when our digital solutions are getting deployed, we have to think about utility and not adoption. The whole business value is created when you add technology and humans together. So when I haven't done this in the last 4 or 5 years, in one of the organizations that I was working with, when we were deploying a platform, I said, the HR will not be a part of this. It is the employee, because it's employee facing. Let employee come. So the demos were made to the employee of that platform. The employee said, this doesn't make sense to me. This doesn't make sense to me. Can you do it a different way? And that's how the whole solution was configured. So the entire solution was implemented by the employee, a group of employees, and not by the HR guys. And everybody was laughing at me. What are you doing? They'll create something very weird. I said, no. Have patience. And that solution is still a blockbuster solution on skills in a group called Landmark, which is one of the big, large retailers. Okay, I was heading HR for their digital team. And they love it. They haven't moved away from that particular platform. Even better solutions have come in the market. Why? Because that's something that they relate to, right? When you talk about employee experience, I want you to take back these 5-factor equation, all right? And it'll always give you the right guidance. Employee experience is not about trophy perks. It's not about bean bags. It's not about great salaries also. It's a come together of 5 factors, which is the cultural experience that Vardha has spoken about, we've been speaking about. You know, it's a smell in the air that you get. You know what is culture? My definition of culture is very simple. It's a smell in the air. When you go to Calcutta, peak monsoons, what do you feel like? AC lagao, so jao. But the minute you go to Goa, even if it is peak summers or whatever, you want to hit the beach. There's something in the smell in the air which makes you behave a certain way. That culture is the first experience. Then there is this organization experience with your DOAs, decision-making systems, etc. There's a technology experience. Is my technology fragmented or does it make sense to me? What's in it for me to go to this particular platform? The workplace experience, the most negated one. A workplace experience is not about bright colors and this and that. It's about my stunning colleagues. It's about, people talking nicely to me. I talking nicely to people. We say respect and all of that. But is that demonstrated? I keep saying in one of the podcasts, I said that HR's job is to be an organizational therapist. You are. You are supposed to observe these patterns and signals and correct them whenever you can. And that's how your workplace experiences get better. But the most important one, which I've kept at the last, is the meaningful work. And you will find this. Somebody asked about that generation's question, that what drives people today. I think it's not about the generation, it's just about the people who are working today. What drives us is meaningful work. Do I find joy in what I am doing? If not, I'll crib. And when I crib, there'll be negativity. And when there's negativity, politics, all of that, my productivity goes down. Anjan and I were having a conversation that, can AI replace politics? Definitely, man, because the reason why politics happens in the organizations is two humans who don't like each other, right? Conflicts. When an AI and an AI talking to each other, they have no other choice but to like each other. Right? So no conflicts, no politics. Remember? Okay. All right. So human-led transformation principles are very simple. I'm not going to go through all of that because this keynote is to give you thoughts and ideas and maybe hand over this deck to you all. But I'll just talk about a couple of these or maybe one. When we talk about human-led digital transformation, it's always about what's in it for me. That's your start point. Not technology, not subscription rates, not because some other organization is doing it, therefore I'm doing it, maybe you don't need to. It's about what does your employee need and how do you architect the whole journey around the WIFM of it. Employee experience in digital programs will give you these kind of matrices. One is adoption and utility, which is the proficiency of it. Active daily users is what you have been monitoring, right? I'm sure you have been monitoring. But what does this indicate, active daily users, is that they are going again and again. You have to go back to your IT heads and see whether these matrices are actually being measured. You'll be surprised with the answers. They say, what is that? We just look at adoption. We are at 80% adoption. And how do you define that adoption? People who have signed into the platform or the technology. Nothing more. Even Copilot analytics are being done like that. But what is the active daily usage? You have a strength of 10,000 employees. How many of those employees are right now on that platform in a period of 12 hours? What is the feature depth? Get an insight from your employee. What is the feature depth? What is the time to first value? These are the important matrices that you are not monitoring. Okay, and these have to be looked at. Similarly, ticket volume, things like sentiment and well-being. Now, again, this is a very well-abused kind of we don't know what is sentiment and well-being. We think getting the surveys done is equal to me demonstrating what my sentiment in the organization is. It was okay for like 5 years back, but today, no. I keep saying, what is the timing of these sentiment analysis and your employee pulse surveys? In another 1 month, I have a performance review. Today, you're sending me a survey for the organization. Obviously, I'm going to be happy and good about it. Because I'm not scared. I'm scared. It's just about a month. But is there another method to look at what is the real sentiment on the organization? And that's something that you could do some reading up on. It's called organizational network analysis, which reads through the data in the organization on emails, on performance tools, on reward and recognition platforms, everything. It just reads and throws up what is the sentiment in the organization. You don't even have to ask anybody anything. And then you validate it and correlate it with your surveys. But the start point is there. So that has to be looked at. So these are some important matrices that I think are important for us to start monitoring. And then, of course, a playbook for all of you all who are heads of HRs and CHROs here. This is how you need to go about it. You think about the pre-launch. When you think about the pre-launch, your employees are a part of it. When you think about the launch, your employees are a part of it, not as receivers, as ambassadors. When you think about the post-launch, your employees are the one who are coming back and saying these feedback, this iteration, this change needs to happen. When you think about the scale and sustain, your employees are the one to take a decision. It's a different thought. It's a radical one. But try it for some small launches, for small POCs. You'll be shocked at the results that you get. So what you need to do next, amongst many things, I'll just talk about one. You got to put people metrics next to technology metrics. Do you understand what that means? Think of a people metric. Just think about it. Anything. Let's say attrition. What could be a technology metric that should marry attrition, which should correlate to attrition? Think about it. It's a very easy one. Training, okay. But training is, again, number of hours and this and that, right? Technology metric, I'm saying tech metric. Think of adoption, analytics, think of utility, think of time to fill, think of SLAs, complaints, grievances. I'll give you an answer. Attrition. You look at attrition rate, now you put a technology metric saying number of grievances that were answered in less than 24 hours. If you have a ticketing tool, I don't know. I'm just assuming that you do. You'll be surprised that the minute your ticketing SLAs or number of tickets, they go higher for grievances, attrition rises. Simple logic here. But we are not putting it together, we are not evaluating it together, therefore we don't know. There's something wrong somewhere. Number of grievances, number of complaints, number of this, number of that. So all of these technology matrices, if you start putting it together to people matrices, the stories will change. All right? And that's about it. The reason I did a quick one is so I could give you 5 minutes back to ask questions if you have any. So please, the floor is open if you have any questions, and then we can move on. It's usually the first one that is difficult, and then of course.
Hi, Vikas. I'm Suhasini. Thank you for the session. And yes, of course, the question is going to be with the last one you spoke about on tech metric versus, I'm sorry, I couldn't get that.
The tech end?
The tech metric to be related with the attrition.
Okay. Here you see this?
Yes. Now, attrition and the tech metric that you spoke about, about relating to the grievances raised.
Yeah.
So that was one of the examples that you gave. I would like to hear a few more examples. First one. Second thing is, do you think that people in organizations would definitely go with grievances? Or there are a lot of people who are very quiet. And do leave the organization. So
yeah, let's bring this together. Thank you for asking that question. I spoke about a couple of matrices, not just one. Now, remember I spoke about the listening side of it through sentiment analysis? Right? Your data as a sentiment analysis is showing that something wrong in a certain cohort of people, in a certain group of people, let's say manufacturing, okay? Attrition is high. The grievances raised are high. Now, all of this coming together is indicating something to you. So when I say that the tech metric of adoption, utility, time to fill, etc., has to be correlated to attrition or any other people metric, this is what I mean. That you cannot look at people metrics in isolation. Let's look at another one. Let's look at performances. Okay, I don't know if you follow this particular metric, which is to say number of people who filled up their goal sheets in time, on time in fill of KPIs. Now just think about it. What will be the tech metric around it? Technology metric. It's very straightforward. What do you think will be the straightforward technology metric around it? There are some 2-3 of them actually, but just think about it. We'll think it right now. I want you all to think, because otherwise it'll be, dependent on somebody else's for answers. You think about KPIs, where are they filled? On a certain platform? Okay. Now you think about the technology metric. Percentage active users onto that particular tool for that period. I'll tell you what this reveals. This reveals that, that period when you started your cycle and you said that this is the time for you to start filling in your KPI sheets, there was only 60% who were there. Okay? And that gives you an indicator you got to do some kind of a change management program to be able to push for the KPI lifts. Or there's another story that one organization reported, which is that the active daily users on that particular platform for that period were like 30%, but 100% KPI fulfillment. How is that possible? Cascading is a good thing, but in this particular case, it was a copy-paste. There was somebody, like an HRBP, who said, okay, for this organization, I have a proxy access. You give me the Excel, I will fill it up for everybody. Suddenly you discovered something which you otherwise would never have known. So when I say correlate, this is what I'm saying, that for every one of your HR metric, learning was spoken some time back, has to be correlated with active daily users. If you're reporting only planned training hours, the actuals against that, it's not enough because your LMS is still not being consumed. People are not going and pulling learnings. They are coming there only for mandatory and the other learnings. So that's what I mean when you correlate these two factors. Yeah. Any other questions?
Hi, Vikas.
Hi.
I have a question about how do you even depend on the data? Because the data itself,
Anxiety.
I'm not sure whether it's right what we are
Anxiety,
looking
you
at.
mean?
Yeah, basically like the psychological safety of an employee who is going to even give you all these data around, right? And even though we talk about culture and everything, right, down to the last employee, how do we ensure we develop a kind of a psychological safety ecosystem so that whatever we are capturing is actually giving us what we need to solve around, right?
Yeah.
There might be a lot of things which just doesn't get captured the right way.
You're right. And okay, so there are a couple of things. One was the sanctity or the quality of the data. The other is the psychological safety. I think a lot of that depends on the actions that you take with the data. If you start taking regressive actions, which demonstrate control, which demonstrate policing, surveillance, obviously people will not throw up or not share. They'll be careful. The minute I go and do a town hall and I tell my employees, you know what, I am now going to read through your emails and I'm going to read through your performance review data and then take decisions. So obviously people are going to be very careful. But the minute I wire this messaging to say that, you know what, the emails that you write, you can review them yourselves to figure out active passive networks, that which are the people that you are engaging with more and which are the people that you're not engaging with enough. This is a value add for you as an employee. Then they'll be okay to share this data. So it's about how do you message. The messaging is not by saying something around our policies and all of that. So no regressive actions are very difficult to control, because the minute we as HR professionals have this wealth of data, we start going crazy on taking actions. I've seen layoff decisions being done on some of this. Not the right thing to do. And that's where you, who are the organizational therapist, need to become that guardrail and say that no, these decisions will not be taken. We have to wire them differently. It's your job. Because this data is very, it's like, you know, you give a small toy or a gun to a small child, you know, and people start shooting here and there and some damage can happen. So you got to be so careful, and therefore people who here in this room are engaged in these matters, what are the action points? They should be approved, or the guardrail has to be with you. It cannot be with the whole goddamn world. That's why in most organizations they have a centralized function today of data and analytics. Why? So that the data is not misinterpreted and misused, so that the employees don't get scared. But over the next few years, when people get a little more matured, like all of us together, then we will do our own analytics and do our own decision. Does that make sense? But it's a very risky one. Huh? I mean, glad you brought it up, because I've seen organizations where employees have gone into a shell just because that data was consumed and thrown all around and people were exposed left, right, and center. So that decisions have to be very, very carefully done. Yeah.
One last question.
It's just a follow-up question that we are dependent on prediction models, okay? And like you said in your last session, that we are using normative science to basically get into positives, correct? This is based on human experiences.
Which science, sorry?
Normative science. It's based on normative science, correct? So when prediction model goes wrong, then someone has to step in.
Yes.
And point out the false negatives and the false positives. Correct. So how do you encounter, have you encountered any situation like that?
I mean, this is like bread and butter. I mean, first is...
Yeah. So the question in that is that how do you maintain objectivity?
Correct. You know, and this is a very deep question. This is the first rubber meets the whole road kind of a question that I've heard since morning. Just to simplify this, basically means predictive model says a lot of things. Your predictive model is saying that this is going to be the future. Okay? It will not be 100% right. And if it is not, then what do you do about it? Okay? Now let me tell you, if you're rolling out predictive models with less than 80% validation or 70% validation, let's say, depending on the use case, you're making a huge mistake. One, what does that mean? That whatever is the data that is coming out from the predictive model, you have to, from historical trends, identify whether this is at least being 70% accurate. Right? Let's say you've looked at your 5-year data, last 5 years, and you know who all have tried it. And you're building an attrition prediction model, which basically says that Vikas is going to attrite in so and so month. So do it at the historical sets, okay, first, and see whether your model is predicting Vikas's iteration who actually predicted in September 24. Did the model say that? You'll find 70% of the cases are right, you're good to go. One. Second, anything that comes out of the predictive model is not an auto decision. And that's why I keep saying that, all of these have to be layered with human intelligence. What if the predictive model is saying that I have a model which I'm working on, which says the propensity to perform, which is basically to say that who in my organization is going to be a top rater in the next one. The same model also predict who in my organization are not going to be a top rater or the bottom raters in the next. So does that mean, to your question also, does that mean now I go and get hold of all those guys who my model threw up as non-performers and make them go out and replace them? No. So therefore, the human intelligence on top of the predictive model is the critical part of it. And then whatever you observed, because the intent is always to make the model 100% accurate, that knowledge has to go back. The model has to be trained again to move from 70% to 72 to 75 to 78. It's a very long journey. It's not as simple as saying, we're sitting in this room, oh, predictive model AI, and now we are able to predict. There's massive amount of work that happens behind. And thank you so much for asking that question, because models need to be validated day in and day out. So do not believe everything that predictive models throw. Does that answer your question, sir? Thank you. Thank you so much. So thank you. My time's been up for a while, and thank you for being a nice audience and patient listening. Thank you so much.